Okay. All right, hello everyone. Today we're fortunate to have Zachary Banner, who's a data engineering manager at Conde Nast. He'll tell us about securely facilitating data access at a global scale. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for the intro. Everyone, thanks for being with me today. I hope you're all having a fantastic conference. It's been truly wonderful. It's kind of crazy that it's the last day already. But I appreciate you taking the time to come and learn a little bit about some of the things that we're doing at Conde Nast, specifically with respect to the globalization of data sets using Unity Catalog and Delta sharing. So before we get into it, I just kind of want to give you a brief rundown of what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, some of my background, things that I've worked on, give you a brief history of Conde Nast. I think that's pretty important. I actually get asked a lot about specifics of what Conde actually does. Going to go over the recent history of Conde Nast, specifically with respect to our data engineering and technology platform. A long-term vision. The goal of this specific endeavor to implement Unity Catalog and Delta sharing. Some of the use cases we had in mind when we first started to formulate this idea. I'm going to talk about the specifics of the requirements and outcomes of this project, our proposed and agreed upon solution, the actual implementation of this project. I think it's kind of cool to hear about the results, like the actual outcomes of what we did. Talk a little bit about next steps also. So hey, I'm Zachary Banner, Data Engineering Manager at Conde Nast. I oversee two teams. One is commercial and commerce, so you can think of that as all things revenue generating, so really small job. Anything that's with respect to our affiliate sales, our native website sales, our advertising sales, that bubbles up underneath me. My other team is also product performance, so that is really with relation to anything that we can do to gauge how people are interacting with our products. And when I say product, I mean websites, mobile apps, social media posts for our various brands. I have been in the data sphere for a little over 5 years. I started as a consultant, and in that previous iteration of my career, I really focused a lot on not just building solutions, but building frameworks, thinking about how my solution would function 18, 24 months in the future, really trying to make things easy for people to use. As a consultant, you kind of have to have this implicit understanding that the project will always end and you're going to leave people with artifacts, and those people still need to be able to use what you've produced. So make it easy, make it simple, make people happy, I think. My road to the data world has been somewhat circuitous. Prior to being a data engineer, I was a pharmacist. I ran a specialty clinic for Walgreens on the north side of Chicago. That is not me, that is Tate, the pharmacist from Superstore. And there was a previous iteration of my career before that. I worked in restaurants for a long period of time. I was a line cook. I worked my way up to front of house, became a sommelier. I am a certified sommelier through the Court of Master Sommeliers. Let me tell you, it is very helpful to be able to navigate a wine list in this current place that I'm in my career. In my free time, I also play in a rock band. I'm the lead singer for 5 Step Drop. We are based in Chicago. Please check us out on Spotify if you want. We actually have a show coming up on July 15th. Shameless plug, if you're in Chicago, please come and check us out. I think it's pretty cool. But really all of this is just to say that there's a really big world out there. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to learn. And I just like doing cool things, and I think we get to do a lot of cool things at Conde. So speaking of Conde, who are we? What do we do? What's our history? Conde really is a pretty interesting company. We were founded in 1909. It's almost 115 years old. So you can think about, we don't have data going back to 1909, thank God, but we do have a tremendous amount of data at our fingertips. I get asked a lot, again, about what is Conde, and I think it's helpful to just kind of talk about some of the brands that we represent. 37 brands across virtually every single market on the face of the planet. GQ is a major one. Vogue, it's really like the fashion Bible. The New Yorker, it's a cultural icon. In my opinion, it's one of the last bastions of true journalism. I think that's pretty cool that we get to work with them. Allure, I actually do a lot of work with Allure and our Allure Beauty Box product. I'm trying to understand how people interact with that product. Bon Appetit, hey, I come from restaurants. I like to cook. I get a lot of inspiration from Bon Appetit. Conde Nast Traveler, really where it started. And Wired, I'm sure there's somebody from Wired at this conference who's going to be writing an article. So all these things are somewhat interrelated. To give you a little bit of an overview of the data team at Conde, it is a global team. We are spread across 4 countries on multiple continents, the US, the UK, India, Germany. My teams sit in the US, UK, and India, so I exist in virtually every time zone on the planet, which is interesting. It certainly makes my schedule very fun. We are a unified team, but divided across multiple verticals. We already talked a little bit about the commercial and commerce vertical, product performance, platform, which I do a lot of work with the platform in our Databricks implementation, which is probably why I'm here talking to you today. We also have consumer growth and subscriptions, data enablement team, data growth team, data products, data story lab. I mean, it's a lot. We do a tremendous amount of work with data. So to talk a little bit about the recent history of the data program at Conde Nast, and really like where Conde was like 5 to 10 years ago. Conde essentially operated as one company, but myriad organizations within that company, each with their own set of policies, processes, different tech stacks. You can kind of see where this is going. Every market was operating as an individual. There was very little cohesion in our approach to solutions. As you can infer, this led to redundancies, inefficiencies. It's just expensive to maintain all these different processes across, again, 37 markets, or 37 brands across global markets. It's a huge, huge, huge amount of things to maintain. Having an individualized approach to that really just is not a good road forward. This led directly to siloed business units and operations, and of course, siloed data assets, and we really just didn't have an ability to leverage the data that we have for all of our brands, for all of our markets to make actionable decisions. So where are we going? What's our long-term vision? Our long-term vision really is to build a unified data platform. We want to focus on making our systems unified. Again, we talked a little bit about building frameworks, making things easy. We want a single way for all of our team members to do things so they can speed up their processes, so they can just do their jobs more effectively. We want to de-silo our data and our practices across the entirety of the business. The only way forward for us is to be able to have actionable data sets, to actually be able to use the data that we have from all of our markets, from all of our brands. We want to do this at a global scale. We want to build global technology and data products for use for the entirety of the business, not just for a single business operation or unit. We also need to ensure compliance with all regulatory policies. There seems to be a new one every day. It's of the utmost importance to us, not just from a regulatory standpoint, but from an ethical standpoint, to ensure that our customers, all of our users, their data is protected and they have the right to be forgotten, and that's absolutely valid. As a corollary to this, we also need to implement granular governance of all of our data sets. Only the correct people within an organization should have access to the correct data. We don't need to expose everything to everybody. So that brings us to Evergreen, which is our lakehouse. It really truly is a unified global data platform. It is constantly growing. It is the embodiment of the idea of centralized to de-silo. So just to talk a little bit about the overall architecture of Evergreen, I mean, this is, in my opinion, the embodiment of the Databricks Lakehouse architecture. It is a unified data platform, all running on Databricks from ingest all the way through ETL processes, and then exposure of the data to our end users, whether those users are our business analysts or executives or our machine learning and data science teams. So what do we want to do with this specific project? We wanted to build global data assets. We wanted to ensure privacy compliance 100% of the time. We also wanted to do this effectively, efficiently. We needed to avoid any data duplication issues, any data transfer costs. And also, at some level, I feel that data engineering is still a customer service-based endeavor. My customers are my business analysts, the machine learning team, the data science team. We have to be able to provide them with what they need to do their jobs. So throughout this entire process, we had to make sure that we were avoiding any sort of service disruptions for any existing pipelines. People have work to do, and I do not want to stand in the way of them. That's really cool. We're like, why do all of this? Why take on this whole set of work? Well, we had actually a very hard timeline for the rollout of Vogue Club UK. Being able to share data between the US and the EMEA regions was critical for this to work. On top of that, this sits very closely to me, we are very focused on expanding our affiliate sales. We see that as being a large area of revenue growth. And being able to actually have a global view of who our customers are, of who is going to be most likely to participate in Vogue Club UK, who's going to be most likely to purchase an Allure beauty box or a GQ beauty box. Those are really important to us, and we see a huge area of growth in the future. At the core of it, we're still a content-producing organization. We need to be able to effectively understand who our global customer is, to be able to serve them with the content that they want, whether it be from the New Yorker or from CNE. I mean, we're getting into television production, movie production, podcast production. These are huge areas of growth for us too. So being able to understand how our content is performing, not just in a specific market, but across all markets, and understand who that global customer is, critical to us. We're also moving into a new paradigm for our tracking of our traffic data, moving from third-party tracking to first-party tracking, and we want to do this at a global scale. This is extremely important to us. I think that the overall project to move to first-party tracking, it's a completely separate presentation, but it's super interesting. Maybe we'll be back here next year to talk about that. So before we started on this, we wanted to sit down and actually understand what we had to do and what we wanted out of the project. So first, we had to ensure that all Databricks workspaces have the same structure. We have to enable Unity Catalog for all of our workspaces. I mean, kind of intuitive that you would need to enable Unity Catalog to use Unity Catalog. Still, it helps to list it. We wanted to significantly reduce the amount of time that it would take us to spin up new workspaces. This was a non-trivial amount of work in the past, so it was really important to us to streamline that process. We also wanted to ensure that we have granular access controls for all of our data products. Everything needs to be managed with Terraform. Philosophically, we are opposed to management of any resources through any sort of UI. Everything needs to be version controlled. We have to be able to track everything. Come find me after this. We can have a whole conversation about things that I've found when things are not managed through code. And I just want to avoid that. At some level, I am fundamentally lazy, and I don't want to have to go through a whole lot of things to find out who did something in a UI at some point in time. I want to be able to go and see the actual commit that made whatever change. We also talked about the fact we need to ensure privacy compliance with any current privacy regulations and any future regulations. This is all tied still to the granular access control that we needed to implement for this project. Money's important. We got to do it cheaply. We have to make sure, again, that we are eliminating data transfer costs. We're eliminating the need for data duplication. I think that that's kind of just endemic to this era. Everybody wants to do things a little bit more efficiently. I'm totally on board with that. I think it's a fun problem to tackle. Back to customer service. Make things work. Don't make somebody's day bad by interrupting what they have to do and interrupting their deliverables. And the whole concept is create global data assets so we can move forward as an organization, so we can have actionable data sets on a global scale. So the solution, it's really just Databricks, Unity Catalog, and Delta sharing. These are the core tenets of our globalization efforts. So for Unity Catalog, I think this kind of comes back to this idea that there's really only two hard things in software engineering, cache and validation and naming things. So Unity Catalog really gives us the hierarchical control and design that makes our lives a little bit easier. It's a single account with multiple workspaces across multiple continents. A nuance about our implementation is that we are exclusively leveraging external locations, no managed tables. This was done because we already had a tremendous amount of resources that existed within our United States workspace. We did not want to have to recreate any resources, have to move anything over to the new resources. So we had to maintain any of the S3 buckets we already had in existence, also to continue to provide our end users with a seamless experience. We had to promote a legacy workspace level service principles to the account level, again, to maintain continuity for our end users. We had to add new service principles to every project, and then create bronze, silver, gold catalogs for each workspace. Previously, we relied upon naming conventions to determine where a data set should live. I firmly believe that if you don't automate that process, if you don't enforce it, people just forget. I forget things all the time. That happens. This is also why we have to enforce this through the creation of the bronze, silver, and gold catalogs. Next up, we had to implement Delta sharing. This is all done through Terraform. And what I think is actually really cool about our Terraform implementation is that it's completely configuration driven. Everything essentially lives in a YAML file. So once we had the logic in place, creating new resources, updating resources, it's a typing exercise. It really doesn't take very much time at all. On to the implementation. So the first thing we wanted to do was unify our Terraform code for all of our workspaces. With the development of the APAC and EMEA workspaces, we already had a modular approach. Now the tough thing was, how do we refactor the US workspace while maintaining all of the previously existing resources, while maintaining a continuity of our pipelines while we did all of this. So we decided this is also a really good time to update our Terraform version, just so we had the full amount of functionality provided by Terraform, by the latest versions of Terraform. We also wanted to ensure that we restructured the code base for the US workspace to match that of the EMEA and APAC workspaces to the best of our abilities. And also, again, we wanted to really reduce or eliminate the need to have to create net new resources for things that already existed. So moving forward, we had to implement the basic requirements for Unity Catalog. So this involved adding account level resources to the US region to match those that existed in the APAC and EMEA regions. We had to create new IAM roles, new service principals, and instance profiles for all of our projects. Create new OBO tokens for our service principals as well. We had to grant access to the instance profiles for the IAM roles and the service principals. We had to import all of our legacy tokens that existed in the pre-Unity Catalog implementation into the Terraform state. Again, continuity for our end users, very important to us. We had to create catalogs and the associated ACLs for the US workspace to match, again, those of the EMEA and APAC region. This is, again, driven by YAML configuration files. And then do the same thing for the schemas and their associated ACLs for all the regions. Finally, we had to create additional compute resource configurations for the US to enable us to actually use Unity Catalog. So next up, we had to actually implement delta sharing. So we did that by importing and defining the metastore from the US region to the Terraform state. This really was done so we could retain all the metadata that we had from our previous implementation and just really port that over to Unity Catalog. We had to configure the metastore in all the regions to include the name of the delta shares that we were going to create. We had to create recipient resources for all of the metastores. We had to do this also in an extensible, easy-to-use way. And again, this goes back to the whole idea of the modular design and configuration-driven process. So everything just lives in a configuration file. You don't have to be overly technical to create your own shares. You can just go in, modify your configuration file, and everything is deployed through our CI/CD process. Because we're exclusively using external locations for everything, we also had to implement storage credentials for the external storage. Guess what? This is, so we did this, excuse me, by ensuring that we had a configuration for each of the regions and environments for each workspace. This, again, is configuration-driven. There's just a for each loop to create external locations. This was done for all the pre-existing S3 buckets, and also it does it automatically every time you create a new S3 bucket, now and forever. So that step is just taken out of the process. Everything is deployed for you automatically. I do want to note that I've been talking about the desire to have everything match each other from region to region. That's not quite possible with the requirement to maintain some of the legacy resources for the US workspace. However, everything new that we will implement will adhere to the new modular design. So there's always some challenges associated with every project we take on. That's why we all have jobs. There's something to find out, something to do. So one of the first challenges we encountered was, how do we actually migrate all of our current users from the workspace level to the account level? Again, just keeping in mind this idea of continuity of resources, continuity of our pipelines. We also face a challenge of managing our external locations and the catalog ACLs on a granular level. Hey, cool, you enable UC. Now you have to move everything from the Hive Metastore over to Unity Catalog. That's also something we had to tackle. And I hate to say it, but we did experience one day of failing pipelines due to some security configurations. I will say that the disruption was minimal. It was a matter of hours. It wasn't anything too crazy, but our goal was 0. We're someplace a little above that. That's okay. So how did we overcome some of these challenges? So really, just to overcome the first challenge was to append the environment and region to a group. We previously for the US workspace just had data eng. Now we have data eng US dev. Pretty easy, but you just got to be consistent. So we removed from the problem of managing external storage locations. We just removed group level ACLs and restricted access to external locations for staging and prod to service principals. So an individual user or group really shouldn't be able to access anything outside of dev. Databricks provides us with the sync function, so that makes our job of migrating everything from the Hive Metastore to Unity Catalog, pretty simple. And finally, we addressed the pipelines failing by just simply passing a security configuration to the cluster configurations. There's an argument in cluster configs called data security mode. You set that to none if you are operating in a place where you are someplace between Unity Catalog and using the Hive Metastore. But we'll address this again once we've completely migrated over. So what was the outcome? Money. I think it was a resounding success. Vogue Club UK launched on time. It's been super successful so far. We've established our first globalized data sets. This really is a completely new way of harnessing information for us. These are going to provide us with invaluable insights into our global customers, and really, I think, unlock and expand our capabilities well into the future. We talked a little bit about the desire to reduce the amount of time it took to deploy a new Databricks workspace. In the old world, that took about 2 weeks. We reduced that time to about 6 hours, and that was for the APAC workspace. And I think that moving forward, it'll be even less than that. I mean, it's a 98% reduction of time, so I'm pretty proud of it. We only experienced that one minor blip in our existent pipelines, so I think perfection is maybe not attainable, but minimizing the disruptions to our end users, that was pretty cool. We've virtually eliminated all data duplication costs and any data transfer costs. And really, most importantly, we are completely adherent to any and all privacy regulations that currently exist and set to move into the future and be compliant with any new ones that should arise. So what are we going to do next? We have to identify the catalogs for our current schemas and tables. And by catalogs, I mean, like, where does this data set fall? Is it bronze? Is it silver? Is it gold? And again, because of the reliance on naming conventions, nothing was like super enforced. That does actually take some time where you have to go through and understand the granularity of the data set that you're looking at. We're going to employ an automated SQL script to perform the sync function for us, so we can just iterate over all of our tables and move everything over once we've cataloged all of them. We still do need to upgrade all of our Databricks clusters to at least DBR 11.3. That's just a hard requirement for Unity Catalog, and it's also going to be a hard requirement for some of the other things we have planned in the future. And of course, we have to test. We have to test everything. I mean, we're pretty confident of our processes and the validity of our pipelines in the non-UC world, but we want to make sure that everything is what we promised it to be. Our data is only as good as its level of trust, and I place great importance on maintaining the trust of my customers. We're also going to continue to work with the data governance team at Conde to flesh out our global data asset governance protocols. We also are looking to potentially bring in an additional tool to help non-technical users develop governance rules and enact them. Big thing for me, I'm super excited about being able to expose lineage data to the entirety of the organization. I think it's going to free up people's time. They don't have to come and ask me what data lives where. They can just go and look at a pretty simple graph and find things for themselves. I think it's empowering to give our non-technical users that kind of access to discovering for themselves what we have. And at the end of the day, I mean, this really is just about continuing to build upon the foundation that we have, to continue to increase the number of globalized data sets that we have, to continue to provide value to the business by exposing all this data. So I just want to say a special thank you to Nanya Osman. Without him, I wouldn't be on this journey, so really appreciate it. Lauke Pants and Dinekar Sundar, they're actually they're the heroes of this. They did the majority of the actual technical implementation, and without their help, we would not be here. And then also thank you to the Databricks team and our partners there, Doug Chando, Shashank Kava, and Emma Stein. I think it's really it's a lot of fun to be able to work with you so closely. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your time. I think we have a few minutes left. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.